Okay, so the federal government will be meeting with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs to try to end this ongoing protest. Justin Trudeau said Carolyn Bennett, his minister, will be the representative. But will they find a solution quickly enough? Can Canada survive the economic toll of having vital rail lines now shut down? CN shutting down just minutes ago its Eastern network via canceling all passenger service. Let's get a provincial leader who's been very vocal on the topic. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe joins us now from Regina. Premier, I got to get your reaction now to the cancellation of via rail service across the country and CN shutting down its Eastern Canadian network and laying off workers.
Well, this is very problematic for an exporting province like Saskatchewan and an exporting nation like Canada. Listen, we were just down in Washington this past weekend advocating for trade infrastructure and transportation infrastructure such as Keystone XL, as well as the expansion of Line 3, so that we're able to get our sustainable product into other areas of North America. The fact that we don't have that infrastructure puts product just like that on rails where it shouldn't be. We have had a derailment just outside of Saskatoon, the second one in the last few months. This is the challenge that we have when we have inadequate pipeline infrastructure. And now we have what really is amounting to civil disobedience that is shutting down not only our export opportunities, but very quickly will escalate into a crisis of accessing product into our communities, product that we need to have our daily lives continue.
Premier, how damaging and how quickly damaging economically could this CN rail and via rail shutdown be, not only for your province but for the country?
Well, the damage is already there to the economy. We are going to feel this for days, weeks, and likely months to come as we see CN is shutting down their Eastern Link. There are grain trains that are halted in Winnipeg. There are energy trains, or trains with Saskatchewan Energy on them that are sitting and waiting across this nation, as well as trains that are bringing products into our communities. We heard the story last night of a shipment of chlorine that needs to come into a number of different communities across the nation so that we're able to continue to treat our drinking water in our communities. This can be very, very dire, very, very quickly. And the federal government needs to act, not only in meeting with these individuals of the Wet'suwet'en Nation, but also by ensuring that the law of our nation is enforced very quickly.
What does that mean? Do you think the police, the RCMP, should literally move in and pull the protesters off the blockades and off the roads? Is that the answer?
How our law enforcement agency moves in would be at their discretion. But the fact of the matter is in the democracy that we have in this nation is we have parliamentarians that make the law, we have courts that interpret the law, and we have law enforcement agencies to enforce the law to ensure that we have across this nation so that we don't into crisis like we may hear very, very shortly. So how it's enforced is is at the discretion of the law enforcement agencies, but it does need to be enforced.
But sir, I'm just trying to get out. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, I want the federal government to enforce the rule of law, enforce the injunctions, and then say, well, it's at the discretion of the police. I'm asking you, what does that mean? Does that mean you want the enforcement officials, the police, to get in there and, whatever the consequences are, not negotiate, no more dialogue, get them off the tracks? Is that what you're saying?
They do need to enforce the injunctions that are put there. That's why we have law enforcement agencies across this nation. So absolutely, how they do it, that's at their discretion. But whether or not they do it, that is the expectation, should be the expectation, I would hope, of the federal government, and most certainly is the expectation of the government of Saskatchewan. And I believe it's the expectation of the vast majority of people across this nation.
I agree with that. I just got one last question. Are you concerned that if, gosh, these blockades and protests erupted because the police were enforcing an injunction in BC, pulling protesters off, that caused the blockade in Ontario, that has caused this massive shutdown? Are you not concerned, though, even though there's the rule of law, there's court injunctions, that the enforcement might increase the number of protests and blockades and make the situation even worse?
I'm concerned of the public safety risk that not acting will put on many communities across this nation. I'm concerned of the impact of not acting, what that will have on the broader economy of not only the represent, but this nation as a whole. You know, we most certainly, as I say, we have a great democracy here. It is defended by the interpretation of the courts and by the enforcement of our law enforcement agencies from coast to coast to coast. So there is action that will need to be taken to ensure that we preserve the strong economy that we have that is already being impacted, but also preserve the public safety in each of our communities across this nation.
Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan, always good to hear your voice on developing and breaking situation across this country right now. That's very consequential. I appreciate your time, sir, as always.